Welcome everyone to the Simple Fund New Features webinar for the month of May. My name is Anthony Fernandez, and today we'll be taking a closer look at the features introduced in our last update, which was back in April or 22nd of April. And let's go through the features in that release. Okay, so before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping matters. This session is being recorded and will be made available on our BGL YouTube channel, as well as it can be also accessed via our website and on the BGL community channel. I've placed all attendees on mute, but please use the Q&A window to post your questions. I've got a few colleagues signed into this session as well, so they'll answer those questions as I go along with the webinar, and we'll endeavor to answer those as we go through, and whatever is left over at the end, I'll give some time to sort of have those answered at the end as well. So just to give you a quick highlight of how we are tracking in terms of releases. So today I'll be going through the 22nd of April release. We've got one slated for next Thursday, followed by another release 3 weeks later, which is on the first week of June. Okay, so here's what we're covering in terms of Simple Fund 360 features. We'll start off with the first cab off the rank, which is TEBA indexation, which is what I'm assuming a lot of you guys have tuned in today for. Okay, so let me first jump into Simple Fund. Okay, so just to give you a quick update of the TEBA indexation change. So in terms of what transpired is, due to the CPI, or the December quarter CPI hitting the required thresholds, the TEBA cap increased from 1.6 million to 1.7. So that 100K increase will take place as of 1 July 2021. However, compared to how when TEBA was initially introduced back in 2017, not all members or trustees would have access to that 100K increase. And that would depend on, as to how much they have access to, would depend on how much of the current 1.6 cap is unused. So just to give you a couple of quick examples, if a member is in accumulation phase currently with no income stream started, as at 1 July 2021, they would be able to start a pension by moving into out of accumulation 1.7 million. So they'll have access to the full 1.7 cap. However, if a member has already started, let's say, a pension as at 1 July 2020 for 1.6 million, then they would have no claim to any portion of that 100K increase. So that's just, I guess, the two extremes of this whole 100K indexation. It depends, as I said, on how much has been unused of this 1.6 or the original 1.6. Okay, so let's jump into the software and let's have a look at a couple of examples. So in this particular fund, so we're in the 2021 financial year still. Let's start with Sarah Jones, because that's more of a straightforward example. So Sarah started a pension on the 1st of September for 300K. Now, in terms of how the system would calculate as to what portion of the 100,000 they would have access, or Sharon would have access to as at 1 July 2021. Let me switch back to the slides. This is the calculation that the system would run. So it will take the 300,000, and it needs to, because we need to look at the unused portion, as I mentioned. So we look at the proportion of the used portion first across the 1.6. The percentage is turned into, so you multiply it by 100, it's 18.75. You need to round it down or essentially truncate it to the nearest whole number, so which is the 18. And then you need to get the unused portion. So that's why you take it away from 1, and then you multiply it by the 100K cap increase, which in this situation amounts to 82K, which results in Sharon being able to essentially have up to 1.682 million in retirement phase. So she does not get access to the full 100K, but just to 82K of that indexed cap increase. So as you can understand, this whole new indexation brings about a concept of a personal cap, because not everyone has access to the 1.7. It would be dependent upon how much they, or the highest pension balance they had prior to this prior to 1 July 2021. Hopefully all that made sense so far. Okay, let's have a look at, so for example, if you're currently in the, or I'd assume most of your funds would be in the 2021 financial year, the TEBA dashboard itself, I guess majority of the magic happens on the close period. So you need to actually finalize the fund, close period, to actually see that cap indexation take place, or that transaction that we post appear. However, what you can do now is, if you were to go into the member list screen, while you're in the 2021 financial year, essentially go start new pension. Just make sure that the date is in the following financial year. So let's go 1 July 21. Let's say we want to start a new pension for Sharon. If you scroll down, we actually do the TEBA indexation calc for you for the future year. So if you want to do a what if scenario to determine, I don't know, even in terms of the cap bring forward rule, if you want to make decisions in this financial year for next financial year without sort of finalizing the fund, you are able to do it at a member level by just coming into this member list screen. So this will always give you, as long as you're in the new financial year that you're creating the income stream for, you can get a quick snapshot of what the indexed cap would be. However, just bear in mind that all this is predicated on your TEBA dashboard for that member being up to date. And this is where the complexity honestly arises, because the ATO themselves do the same calc, because in terms of lodging events or lodging that indexation event, there is no such event to be lodged to the tax office. So they essentially do a similar calc based on events you've already reported. So for those funds that have member balances over 1 million who report quarterly, I guess it would be a good idea to look at, especially the June quarter, any events that happen during that June quarter, instead of waiting till the 30th of July to lodge those events, look at bringing those reporting frequencies a bit more forward, just so that the ATO have an up-to-date snapshot of that member's scenario, so that when they do the TEBA indexation calc, it marries up with what you have in the software. Similarly, for those members under 1 million, where you have to report at the, or the deadline is during the lodgement of your tax return, which potentially could be 2022 or the 15th of May 2022. As you can imagine, the ATO would not marry up with what you have in the software. So just for this year, while this whole indexation takes hold, just to be safe so that you're not getting excess notifications or not getting them when you should, just make sure that you report as frequently as possible. In terms of the lodgement side of things, nothing's changed. I'm just going to be taking you through just the changes in terms of what we've implemented for the TEBA indexation aspect of things. Okay, so that was essentially a more straightforward example. Next, let's look at a more complex one. Okay, so Nathan in the same fund, who's essentially the first member or second member rather of this particular fund, has 4 events that we need to consider. So the first event on the 1st of August, the member starts a pension for 800K. This member also has a second SMSF, where he's gone and started another pension on the 1st of September for 600K. Now, for this particular example, both funds reside on Simple Fund 360 under your firm. So same firm, member is across multiple funds. That's essentially the concept I want to get across. For 600K, then on the 1st of October, he's done a commutation or a lump sum payout for 300K. So hence the debit. And just on the right-hand column, you've got the running balance. And finally, on the 1st of December, he was the reversionary beneficiary of a death benefit payment of 500K as well. Now, in terms of the indexation, in order to calculate the unused proportion, the rules state that you need to identify what is the highest credit. It's based upon the highest credit, not the current balance or the current credit balance. It's your highest credit balance. So in this particular scenario, what are the rules? Based on what, I guess, balance is the indexation calculated on? Let me first jump into Simple Fund and show you how those 4 events would show in Simple Fund 360. Okay, so this is Nathan. So we've got the 800K, which was the original pension that started on the 1st of August. We've got the commutation here for 300K, which is the debit, and we've got the reversionary of 500. Now, like I said, he's got another fund. I've got the other fund opened here as well. So this is TEBA Fund 1. This is TEBA Fund 2. And here's the 600K for Nathan sitting in that second fund. What you will notice is when I go back or switch back to the first fund, we bring through any balances residing across the multiple funds under the same license as just one event. However, just be mindful in terms of us doing the TEBA indexation calc, we look at it chronologically. So don't worry about the fact that the date is just showing as 30th June here. In terms of our calc, we look at it chronologically to ensure that we get the highest credit balance to base our calculations off. Okay, here's the kicker with this particular example. Let me actually go back to the slide. Let me just jump to the bottom of the slide first. So just with the reversionary income streams, just bear in mind that the event is reported on the date of death. However, the credit itself happens 12 months after the fact. So that was just a bit of an event I've added to confuse you a bit. But if it's a reversionary income stream or the event type IRS, actually, let me jump in here. So if it has the event type IRS or ICR, just be mindful that it does not become a creditor. It's not credited to your account until 12 months after the death of the original pensioner, which is why we base the calculation of 1.4, which is in this case the highest balance. So it's not the 1.1 because we look at the highest credit. It's definitely not the 1.6 because this 500K wouldn't be, I guess, tallied until 12 months after 1 December 2020. Hopefully that made sense. In terms of the calc, it's similar to Sharon. We work off the 1.4, get the whole number, truncate it, and then 1 minus that figure. And in this particular scenario, Nathan only gets 13K of the 100K increment or indexation. Once again, if we were to go back into the member list, let's change it from Sharon to Nathan. And there you go. So that marries up with my calc on the slide. So essentially what I'm trying to point out here is the fact that even if you've got multiple funds, we will chronologically look at each of those transactions and identify what the highest credit is and base our calculations of that. Any questions so far? Everyone's good? It's not just, we have a quick question coming in. Shouldn't 87.5 be rounded to 88? No, you need to go down. So it's the lowest, it's essentially truncated. It's rounded down to the rounded down to the nearest number. Those are the, I guess, those are the rules behind it. Sorry, let me minimize that. So it's rounded down to the nearest whole number. So that's the, I guess, the ATO instructions on that. So therefore, it's essentially, it's another way of saying truncate it or cut the decimals off. And yes, the indexation happens as at 1 July 2021, which is why even though I am in the 2020 financial year in terms of my TEBA dashboard, I'm showing those numbers to you as if though I'm starting a pension on 1 July 2021. If I was to use a 2020 date, this indexation wouldn't be there. Okay, so let's go ahead and finalize the fund. So this is essentially what you can do today in terms of identifying each member's indexed cap. However, this is assuming all your TEBA entries are up to date. So I'm going to create entries to this fund and close period. Just bear with me. All right, let's refresh the screen. So now it's moved into the 2022 financial year, and what you will notice is a new entry. In addition to our opening balance entry, which you would be familiar with if you've used, if you had any TEBA entries in the previous financial years, you'll notice a new entry called cap indexation. Now, on that entry itself, we'll give you as much information as possible as to what we have based our calculations off. So we will tell you what the highest credit balance was that we based our calculation off, as well as therefore what was the unused cap or the percentage that you would get the portion of that 100K indexation. So this is just so that you get a bit of a glimpse of what's happening in the background. So that's the breakdown there. We also give you the ability to edit it. So if you're not happy with what BGL has done in terms of its calculation, it could be for one of many reasons. You can essentially edit it and update it. So we've given you that flexibility. Don't see why you would need to in majority of the cases, because you would rather, or I would rather you have the prior periods events updated and essentially this cap indexation recalculated, as opposed to manually just fudging that figure in here. However, the option is available. What you will also notice is you now have this calculate personal TBC button as well. Now, there's only a few scenarios that you need to use this, or we foresee you using this particular calculate personal transfer balance cap button. One is if you're migrating a fund from Simple Fund Desktop. Now, as you saw, if you've got a Simple Fund Desktop license, you may have seen the correspondence that came from BGL in terms of Desktop not doing the TEBA indexation calcs themselves. So what you can therefore do is migrate the fund, come in here, hit calculate personal cap, and it would run that logic across the TEBA events for the prior years and post this transaction for you. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is if you were to sort of go make, sort of adjust what we have posted and want to reinstate what the system calculated, you can simply click on that button as well. So that's reason number two. Reason number three is you finalized the 2021 financial year, everything, the clients have signed the financials, you've lodged the tax return, everything's been done. And then you realize there's this one TEBA event for the prior year or from a prior year that wasn't properly reported. So you've gone into the TEBA screen, you've added that prior event. You don't need to reopen and sort of redo the whole close period process. Simply come in here, calculate personal TBC. It will run that whole calc once over and update this entry for you. And the final reason would be you have a client walk in the door today, or rather tomorrow, rather the new financial year, and you're only working on the 22 financial year. So there's no real close period that you need to do for the prior year. So therefore, just put in the TEBA events for the prior years, hit the calculate TBC. You don't need to worry about literally doing the close period process. So it's essentially to run that close period calc without having to close period. That's essentially what this button does. Don't see it being utilized outside of those 4 scenarios, but yeah, essentially, as long as you know what it does, you could use it to, I guess, suit your purpose. Cool. So look, the advantage of us giving this feature to you as early as May or April was to get your feedback as well. So even though this only applies from 1 July 2021, please do use the feedback button here to give us the good, the bad, the ugly. Because if there's any improvements that you feel like we haven't focused on or thought about, definitely use that feedback button to provide us that feedback, because everyone in the product teams do get it. So yeah, definitely let us know what you think in terms of how this has been implemented. But yeah, I can't stress enough as to how important it is to report the events for especially the 2021 financial year as early as possible to the tax office. And yeah, so as this says here, it's a non-reportable event. So you don't actually report the indexation event to the tax office. As I previously mentioned, the ATO does the same calc essentially that the software does. Therefore, unless the events are reported to the tax office, their calculation is going to be it'll be a mismatch between us and the ATO. In addition, we've also updated the transfer balance account summary to pick up the new, I guess, personal caps. And yeah, so that's essentially TEBA indexation. It was a bit long compared to any of the other features that we've covered, but I guess needed to go through a couple of scenarios just to give you an idea of its complexity. It's, look, rule of thumb is highest pension point, and it's based off the unused cap, and just make sure that you report as early as possible to the tax office. Okay, so let's move on. Do have your questions posted. Like I said, I'll go through any sort of outstanding questions at the end, but please post your questions. I'm going to go through the rest of the features as quickly as possible. So what we've also done is we've added the tax-free percentage for each of the member accounts. So this is under member list. Let me cancel out. What you'll notice is you now have the tax-free percentage, and specifically we've given you the percentage for the accumulation accounts as well. So that came highly wish listed, and that has now been executed for you. Next is the contribution breakdown report. So there was an improvement done to the contribution breakdown report. Just to give you some context, in one of the previous releases, we gave you the ability to enter external contributions. So let's jump into Sharon. So in here, I've got Sharon with another super fund as well. She's got contributions going into that fund. What we've added as part of this sprint was the ability to essentially filter and search across, which comes in handy if you've got a lot of contributions for a member going into that external fund that you want to sift through. Outside of that, in terms of the report, let me open that on a separate tab. And we're looking at the contribution breakdown. Oh, sorry, I need to go back a year because I balance forward the fund. Okay, so what we've done is we've given you this breakdown here. So it'll tell you the total internal and external breakdown. So again, this was highly wish listed since we added the external contributions section. What it'll now sort of more easily reconcile to is your internal contributions will now reconcile to your 242 account, which gives you a better sort of breakdown in terms of, instead of just looking at the 22,000 and wondering what does this reconcile to. But yeah, this would be the 242 account, and here's your externals, which would be as part of that external section I showed you previously. The next one is the franking credit percentage. So we've updated our calc, especially the income comparison report. So let me, in terms of just the income comparison reports, it'll now take into account the 26% tax rate as well. So it catered previously to the 30%, 27.5%, and now it has the 26% as well. So it works off our ASIC feed, and essentially where you'll be able to really test it out is in the investment comparison. So just along this estimated franking. So if you were to do the math, I believe for this one, it would have a 26% tax rate. But yeah, so essentially that has been updated for you as well. And like I said, it comes across on our ASX feed. If you want to, again, cross-reference it, have a look at the securities list. It's in the description as to what the tax rate is, and our franking credit essentially is calculated based on that, what comes through from our ASX feed. The next one is the investment strategy filter. So this is a firm level filter of sorts. It's on the entity workflow screen. It's on the left-hand side. So if you scroll all the way down, it's this investment strategy date. So it just tells you as to how current your fund's investment strategy is. So for example, if I click into any of these checkboxes here, it'll tell me, yep, so these two funds, for example, the investment strategy is very recent, as in it says of this year. Last year, if it's more than 2 to 3, over 3 years. Now the screen that it looks at to grab that particular date is the investment strategy screen. So it's this date here. For this particular fund, I haven't got a date entered, but you get the drift. Essentially, it works off this date here for that filter in the entity selection screen. And finally, we've also added a broker, which is the DP Wealth Advisory. And for those of you that haven't seen or haven't previously used broker feeds, it's essentially under Connect, Feed Management. And if we go to Share Data Global, and let me just, and you go under Setup, DP Wealth is now available in the dropdown. So again, these have come through, again, the wish list, or when I say wish list, it's essentially the feedback button here. So definitely continue to use that. It sort of guides our release cycles as well. And as to what we get into each release, we try to keep clients happy by not just putting in compliance features, but wish list items as well. So definitely let us know what you need in terms of making your lives easier, and we'll endeavor to have them slowly but surely. Cool. So that's essentially the lot of the Simple Fund 360 features that I wanted to go through. For those of you that are currently on beta for Simple Invest, we've focused, I guess, last sprint on individuals. So there's a whole heap of reports that were added. Let me show you some of them. All right. So report screen. So I've just sort of switched over to Simple Invest. By the way, so this is the new report screen that essentially we are guinea pigging on Simple Invest at the moment. but rest assured that this will be in Simple Fund, replacing the current report screen second half of this year. So any clients on beta who also use Simple Fund, please use the feedback button. Let us know what you think so that we can make whatever improvements to it before we release it en masse to all clients. Essentially, what we're trying to focus on is one-click generation of reports, as well as the ability for users to create their own tags, so their own favorites, for example, of reports. We've had it out in Simply Invest now for, I would say, almost more than 6 to 8 months. So we've not got any bad feedback as yet. So I'm not sure if clients are using it extensively, but definitely play around on it. Let us know what you think, especially in any improvements that you want us to add. Okay, so going back to the feature set itself. So I've got these reports that were added as part of the individual, set of reports. Let me quickly preview them. So notes to financial. Again, we just grab this off XYZ as we do with the other entities. So nothing new there. Statement of taxable income. Again, there is a whole, under the compliance section, period compliance, there is a whole, workflow that you could go through just to complete the year-end sort of tax calcs as well, which essentially then gets generated as part of the statement of taxable income. Proprietor's declaration. So this can be electronically or rather digitally signed as well. So can the compilation report. And then you have the tax rec with the relevant labels for the individual return quoted in there as well. So that's essentially what was added in terms of reports for Simply Invest. What was also requested by our beta clients were, just in the chart of accounts, there is now a new loan account. So you can now create loan accounts inside those individual entity types. And essentially, you can put in a BSB account number as well, which in future would work, or currently as well, would work with the bank feeds. So if you've got a loan account that can be grabbed via a bank feed, that would then automatically come in as well. So that's been added to Simply Invest for entities such as individual. The final change there is under investments, property dashboard. You'll be able to see the loan status. There was a column added for the loan status as well. So that's essentially Simply Invest. What the guys are focused on is essentially trying to get to sort of a live release as soon as possible. So keep the feedback coming in terms of Simply Invest. If you guys are interested in trialing it out as well, use the feedback button. Let us know. We'll hook you up with a trial account. And yes, we're close to going live. No date set as yet, but we are very close. So stay tuned. All right, to finish off, what's coming up? So the team's currently working on Tax Time 21. So far, there aren't many changes. It's essentially just a year change followed by, they've added a couple of what we call those income types in the dropdown, for the distribution income. There's a couple of new income types that have been added. So that's essentially the changes for tax time. It's not too complicated. However, let's hope the budget doesn't throw a curveball. So that's next week. So hopefully nothing changes, in which case we can get tax time to you early this year as well as we did last year. The other changes is the contribution cap changes for 22 financial year. So similar to the CPI hitting its thresholds, the average weekly ordinary time earnings, or the AVOTI, sort of hit the threshold that required the cap changes to take place. So all those updates again apply as of 1 July. We're currently working on those to have those available to you sometime in June. Superstream rollovers, that's the big one. The guys are fervently working on, so we'll aim to have that to you as soon as possible as well. In terms of the contract note service, Self-Wealth International is on the docket as well to be coming soon. Interactive broker feed, again, highly wish listed, which currently is being worked on. So, and of course, finally, Simply Invest 360 going live. So these are the main sort of focuses for the Simple Fund 360 team. And that's what we're working on. So I'm going to leave it there for questions. Like I said, the recording will be available of this session on the community YouTube channel and website. The next new features webinar, hopefully we'll have some of the stuff that I mentioned in the previous slide, which is slated for early June. So like I said, we have a couple of releases to go before that webinar takes place. So we should have some good stuff for you then as well. If there's nothing else in terms of questions, so have those questions coming in. I'm going to finish here. Like I said, my name is Anthony Fernandez. Please use the feedback button to give us any feedback within software, because that's very important, because that's what we base a lot of our work on. In terms of questions, doesn't seem like we've got any. Seems like it was pretty straightforward in terms of TEBA indexation. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much, guys, for your participation, and hope to talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.